What's up everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been quite a while since I've posted anything. I recently moved to a brand new area of San Francisco and it's been really exciting, but I'm finally starting to get a little bit more situated, and I bought and created a brand new rig for this entire system just to make filming a lot more efficient and a lot more easy. So definitely a lot more content to come. But I wanted to start off this video with essentially a review of the brand new film camera that I recently purchased, which is the Canon EOS-1. This camera has been on my to buy list for quite a while, and now that I have it in my hands and have shot it for the last 3 months, it has really solidified why I needed it, and more importantly, why I didn't buy this a lot sooner. So we're gonna break down the camera today and talk about all of the different things that it has, from the settings to the build, and determine if this is a camera that maybe might fit your overall style or maybe your overall current setup that you may be shooting. So let's jump right into the actual camera itself. So this camera was released back in 1994, and it was one of Canon's last few flagship film cameras before switching over to digital in the year 2000. So this camera does have some pretty cool features that we're gonna break down and, more importantly, talk about. But for the most part, let's talk about the ergonomics of the camera. So the moment you pick up this camera, if you are a Canon user that shoots a lot of Canon cameras, the moment you pick up this camera, it's going to be so second nature. You're already gonna know where everything is, and you're gonna already be starting to shoot and just start enjoying photography. It's really that crazy, and it really shows you the overall innovation that this camera has and how it also started to kind of go into other of the more modern digital cameras that you see. Now, this is a film camera. It shoots 35mm, and it is an SLR, but I'm just comparing it to just the fact that the build of this is very similar to the more modern Canon camera. So it's very easy to start shooting and pick up. And it also has everything where you need it to be. The camera will guide you essentially how to change your ISO, how to change from different modes. It's all very easy, and the camera has everything you need it where it needs to be, and it's not overly complicating and having to go through a whole bunch of different things. It's very simple, very straightforward, and it just makes shooting really, really, really pleasant. So the body itself, so this camera is actually weather sealed, and the body itself is constructed of aluminum alloy. So it can take a pretty decent beating. It was designed to be taken out on adventures. It was designed to do, we can do weddings and portraits, wildlife, and sport photography, and you can take it into some pretty rugged environments because it is weather sealed. So if you get fog on it or mist on it or dust on it, it's going to guarantee that it's not going to get in the camera, which is weather sealed is something that Canon did for a lot of even their newer models. Some of the cameras are weather sealed. So it's really nice to be able to have that in a cool SLR that is fairly rugged and that you can take out wherever you need. So let's talk about the features of this camera. So this camera has a wide variety of different features, and I think one of my favorite things of this camera is the luxuries that it has in it. It's not going to be like your typical SLR that you have that's a little older. This camera does have things that are just considered a modern luxury when it comes to photography. We're talking autofocus and all kinds of other cool settings. You can literally change this camera to shoot in program mode, shutter priority mode, manual mode, bulb mode. You can even shoot double exposures within the camera itself, which is pretty cool to think. The camera also has a 45-point autofocus and a 16 evaluative metering system, so it gives you a pretty good amount of metering when you're essentially using the internal light meter. It does a really good job of capturing images and usually does a fantastic job. I think it only gets confused in very specific lighting situations, but you get that with even some of the more newer cameras as well. For being 30 years old, this camera is just a lot of fun to shoot. The autofocus is incredibly intuitive and it's incredibly snappy, and everywhere you point it, the moment that you lightly push down on the shutter release button, it will just focus and be able to take very clear and crisp images. The camera will allow you to shoot up to 1/1000th of a second, so if you're an individual that likes to shoot your camera wide open, it'll give you plenty of space to be able to shoot wide open and still get a really cool exposure without having to worry about overexposing. which is really, really nice. And now for the reason why I actually bought this. So I actually bought this camera because it does have an EF mount, which is absolutely phenomenal. It is so cool to be able to use my current Canon glass on an older 30-year-old SLR camera. I think that's really awesome. And the fact that I go out and do sometimes portraits or sometimes weddings, to be able to have a digital camera and also a film camera that has the same exact mount is crazy. It's cool to be able to switch lenses interchangeably and then be able to shoot black and white on this camera while shooting color on my digital camera. I think that's really awesome in itself. And the fact that you have access to a wide variety of different EF mounted glass. This glass is usually very clear, and if you're shooting the ultrasonic lenses, which are the red line lenses, the red line glass, you can actually get some pretty cool image quality. Just remember, just because the camera is great doesn't mean the image quality is going to be great. It's always going to be the glass that you put in front of the camera and the photographer itself that goes out and takes pictures. But to have a system that integrates really well with all of my current workflow is something that I wish I would have bought this camera a lot sooner. It would have really helped with creativity, and I'm pretty sure it probably would have helped with getting me some more customers as well. Other things to note about this camera is that you can buy a battery grip for this camera if you decide to do that. The battery grip allows you to do just one thing, and it allows you to shoot 6 frames a second, which in today's economy, I don't see anybody doing. But at the time, if you were a sport photographer or wildlife photographer, that might be something that would be highly appealing. And it also increases the battery life, which brings us to the next topic, the battery life of this camera. So I put a battery in this about 3 months ago, and it still hasn't gone out at all. And I've shot 10 rolls of film through it. I've accidentally left it on. So the battery itself is pretty economical, and it lasts a pretty long time, even if you accidentally leave the camera on. I believe it just kind of idles. I don't think I should be doing that because it's probably going to damage it. So that's something I have to be very cautious of. But you do have to put a 2CR5 lithium battery, which is a kind of challenging battery to find in the real world, but they generally have them at the camera stores, and you can easily find them online for a pretty decent price. And now for the shutter release. So if you're planning on using this camera in bulb mode, you are gonna have to buy a shutter release cable, and the shutter release cable is somewhat challenging to find. It's kind of an obsolete piece of tech, and because only so little were made, it can get expensive. I bought mine for around $25, which is kind of high, but yeah, you'll have to essentially attach that on the side of the camera here. There's a little knob that you'll have to twist. Make sure you don't lose that little cap, and then the shutter release cable will attach into that part of the camera. So next, let's talk about the price point of this camera. So when this camera came out in 1994, it was priced comfortably at $2,000 US, and that was only for the body. If you amount the inflation, that cost today in 2024 would be roughly $4,000 US. So just imagine right now with how much $4,000 can get you with a brand new digital camera. It's pretty insane to think that this camera cost that much at that point. But now that technology has advanced, you can comfortably buy this camera for roughly $250 to $400 US, depending on the overall condition of the camera. I bought my camera on Canon, so thank you Canon for taking really great care of this camera and also maintaining it and just pricing it like it was. It's a beautiful camera, and if you are planning on getting some used gear, I would totally check out Canon. It's probably one of the more trusted camera places that I would buy used gear from. But it is priced reasonable, and you can see that if you're somebody that has Canon glass, why this would be fairly appealing, especially if you're trying to get into film, or maybe if you're trying to integrate a film camera into your system. So who is this camera for? Ideally, this camera, I believe, is for 2 different people. One is a person that might be shooting older SLR cameras that may want more modern luxuries like autofocus and different setting options. This camera would be highly appealing and really fun to shoot. And then next is somebody who may be shooting digital that may want to come into film and has EF mounted glass. I think that's also a really great person that would have fun with this camera. Now, it's also designed for enthusiasts and professionals as well. The one thing that I would be really careful about is that if you are planning on just buying the camera on its own, sometimes the lenses can get a little expensive unless you're just getting a nifty 50 or a 50mm lens. So just keep that in mind. If you already have EF glass, this would be a highly appealing camera to own. So that's one of the main reasons why I ended up buying this camera. But the images that come out of this is just absolutely phenomenal. I pretty much love the pictures that come out. I mean, just take a look at some of these images that I've taken over the last few months. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the review. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate the support. It also helps me grow and keep this going. And also I'll be making a lot more content to come, including some new film stocks that I recently came across. So I will see everyone in the next one, and I hope everyone has a good day. See ya.